OAN is fighting back against this censorship campaign in which Democrat members of Congress, their buddies in the intelligence community and NewsGuard, plus other supposedly private entities have all worked together to yank us from the airwaves on several major carriers, while also attacking our advertisers and our sponsors. Joining us now to discuss his part in bringing light to this on Capitol Hill is Congressman Tim Burchett, the U.S. representative of Tennessee's 2nd Congressional District. Congressman, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me, ma'am.
Great. So there is a push right now in Congress, as you're well aware of, to get hearings on this from the chairman of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, Representatives James Comer and Jim Jordan, respectively. So what's the latest on those efforts?
Well, I've written letters to both of them, as you know, and I'm actually rewriting another letter, and because members have wanted to be on and go on record. My friend Matt Gaetz and I are co-writing one, and folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others have asked to be on it, and we'll have more about that later. But Chairman Comer, I serve on Oversight, as you know, and Chairman Comer told me last week that during the committee, right before it started, I got there a little early preparing my notes for testimony, and he told me, in fact, that he was going to get on that and that we would be having a hearing on that shortly, because he realizes the First Amendment is something we value very much. And unfortunately, I don't think we got the guts to do anything about NPR. I'd be very surprised if they do anything other than a stern letter or a threatening kind of thing. And I hope you all expose that as well, because we have got to get some guts. We've got to take back control of this country. These so-called compromises that we've done. That's why we're $35 trillion in debt. And that's why good folks like you all here at OAN are threatening to lose your jobs, because you have the audacity to speak your mind in a country that supposedly values those kind of things, values the First Amendment and values people's public and private opinion.
You know, we thank you so much, of course, for your support. It's, so welcomed. It's so necessary. It's so needed right now. Yours and your colleagues helping us to fight back right now, because I've realized a lot of people don't even realize what happened to us, right? I remember, I think it was maybe early 2021. I want to say maybe March, April, somewhere around there. I remember I was preparing for my show that day, and on my TV, I had some congressional hearings that were going. It was just kind of fuzzy in the background. This was, again, in the aftermath of January 6th and the national security state going after every Trumper that they could try and find, using January 6th as their excuse to do so. And as I'm sitting there typing up an unrelated segment, I start hearing congressional Democrats actually talking about, and of course they're witnesses that they cherry pick and handpick to come testify before Congress, and they're going back and forth with each other saying, yeah, OAN and Newsmax and these other, more conservative leaning news outlets and the rest, that these are really scary, that we should basically shut them down. And I remember just stopping cold thinking, I know that's what they wanted to, right? There's nothing shocking about that part, but to hear members of Congress, Democrat ones, openly talking about it, that was at least a new one for me. It was almost like a Rubicon had been crossed. So if you noticed that with some of your Democrat colleagues, that, a lot of their plans we all knew that they wanted to implement, but now hearing them talk about it so openly, I mean, that seems like a completely different thing. Is it just them trying to show their hand, saying, hey, we have all the power now, what are you guys going to do about it?
Well, they're just saying the quiet part out loud. And as you brought up January 6th, I was actually the last House member to leave the House floor on January 6th. And when we were going through the tunnel, I won't go through all the back and forth, but when we were going through the tunnel, in fact, there was a member of, I believe it was Public Broadcasting, was actually doing a podcast of some sort in the tunnel. And if you remember, or a broadcast, and if you remember, they kept saying, oh, it was conservatives that were doing all this, and it wasn't. And I asked the January 6th committee, I asked law enforcement to please let me review the tape so I could tell you who was doing that, and they refused it. And I went in 2 weeks later. Rodney Davis, who's not in Congress any longer, but he got me in to see the tapes, and through his connections, and I identified the person, and yet we never heard anything. I'm still waiting to hear from law enforcement, the Capitol Police, on that issue. So, it's very obvious of what's going on. These folks have been ingrained in our government for so long, and they are so afraid that Donald Trump is and they should be afraid, that Donald Trump is going to be our next president, because he will literally clean house, and that's what it's going to take. And America's got to wake up and start putting the pressure on their elected officials to do what's right.